Next News. Breaking news from the White House.
SPLC finally making some headlines. Yes, the group that spent years branding conservatives, Christians, and America First voices as dangerous is now staring down federal fraud charges of its own. Let that sink in. According to the Justice Department, the Southern Poverty Law Center didn't just fail to stop extremism, it allegedly financed it, manipulated, and sold that fear back to donors for millions. Even CBS News had to report it. And if the allegations are true, then one of the most powerful smear machines in modern politics was never protecting America at all. It was manufacturing the very monster it claimed to fight. So just how deep does this go? Now, why does it matter? Well, it matters because the SPLC was never just some fringe nonprofit yelling from the sidelines. Its labels shaped media coverage, corporate policy, tech censorship, school training, law enforcement attitudes, and public pressure campaigns. If the organization allegedly built a money machine by paying extremists, pushing racial panic, and misleading donors, then regular Americans were not just lied to. They were targeted by a political protection racket. Families were taught to fear their neighbors. Christians and conservatives were smeared by association. Donors were told they were fighting hate, while prosecutors during the former Biden administration were reportedly being trained using SPLC material. Think about that. The same outfit, now accused of hiding payments through shell entities, was treated like a moral authority. Politically, this is a devastating win for Trump, because it confirms what the right has warned for years. The activist media government pipeline was corrupt, ideological, and willing to weaponize fear to silence dissent and raise cash. And that same fear is exactly why I am always reminding people to protect what they've built before the panic merchants make their next move. You see, Noble Gold Investments, they understand how these systems work. Wall Street doesn't lose money on sell-offs, you do. They create the panic, wait for you to dump your position out of fear, and then scoop it up at a discount. The big banks aren't selling their gold, they're buying yours. And every time the headlines scream, regular people sell. Every time regular people sell, the institutions are right there waiting with open hands. You built portfolio insurance for a reason. Don't let a red day hand it over to the people who caused it. That's why I tell people to learn how precious metals may fit into a defensive strategy. Visit nextnewsgold.com, it's linked below, and you could qualify for a free 10th-ounce American Gold Eagle with a qualified account. When the fear factories get exposed, the smart move is staying calm, staying informed, and staying ready. Now here's a twist that should make every American furious. This story is so explosive that even with an indictment, major legacy outlets are still trying to cushion the blow. Caroline Levitt called it front page news, and she's right. Critics are asking a simple question now. If a right-leaning group had allegedly funneled money to violent extremists while posing as a watchdog, would the press be whispering about it? Or would it be wall-to-wall coverage for weeks? That media silence is just part of the scandal. House Judiciary GOP just published this clip of Jim Jordan. They wrote the SPLC was funding the very extremism they claim to be fighting. It's always worse than we thought. Watch.
All right, Fox News talking to donors of the Southern Poverty Law Center as the DOJ accuses the group of funding extremism, and Congress promises a deeper probe.
Let's go.
We're going to continue our investigation. We've been investigating these guys for a long time. They were the group behind that whole targeting of pro-life Catholics. And by the way, the Biden Justice Department was using the Southern Poverty Law Center as a way to train prosecutors, for goodness sake, to deal with extremism. That's how ridiculous and wrong this all was.
Jim Jordan promising Congress is now getting involved, showing the rot at the core of the SPLC. Now even CBS forced to cover the fraud allegations and the explosive claims that the smear machine was feeding the very hatred it claimed to fight. Bombshell, Steve Guest writes. CBS News segment on the Southern Poverty Law Center indictment where the SPLC lied to donors, paid violent extremists millions, and manufactured racism for its own purposes. The Charlottesville rally leader attended at the direction of the SPLC and made racist posts under the supervision of the SPLC. CBS News. They can't look away now.
40 years ago, the Southern Poverty Law Center bankrupted the Klan and later recovered millions from neo-Nazi groups, with lawsuits representing victims of violence. But Tuesday, the tables turned. The Justice Department charged the organization with fraud for allegedly misleading donors and lying to financial institutions by paying members of violent extremist groups millions of dollars to act as informants.
The SPLC was not dismantling these groups. It was instead manufacturing the extremism it purports to oppose by paying sources to stoke racial hatred.
Including, the indictment alleges, a leader of the 2017 Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, who, quote, attended the event at the direction of SPLC, made racist postings under the supervision of the SPLC, and helped coordinate transportation to the event for several attendees. But Law Center interim president Brian Fair said the group had long used informants and called the indictment a political attack by the Trump administration.
They have made no secret of who they want to protect and who they want to destroy.
You have to wonder if this...
Attorney Scott Frederickson questioned the Justice Department's legal theories.
Can the federal government persuade a jury that the Southern Poverty Law Center was out there funding extremism for its own purposes, manufacturing racism? That's hard to believe. Obviously, they'll have their day in court.
But there have been calls to investigate the Law Center for years. In 1995, the Montgomery Advertiser was the finalist for the Pulitzer Prize for articles alleging that the center was misleading donors and wasting their money. And more recently, critics say that its hate watch list of extremists includes many mainstream conservatives. Tony?
Jan, thank you very much.
Yeah. We're on that list. CBS laid out the fraud case. The SPLC wasn't stopping extremism. It was feeding it, lying to donors and cashing in while the media looked the other way. Now, one reaction cut straight to why the left and their rhino pals panic every time Trump actually delivers. Mac Taylor writes, the SPLC and the Democrat Party leadership have been fomenting violence and chaos in America for 50 plus years. They get along with the rhinos, but they hate Trump because Trump does things like this. Go America 250. Brian Carson, his reaction, much like mine. He says, I was surprised a news organization like CBS would even report on this story since it is not good for liberals. Of course, I see CBS is not reporting honestly. SPLC was not paying people to be informants. They were paying leaders of hate groups to encourage them to publicly spread more hate. This could encourage voters to vote for Biden and other Democrats to fight this hate, and also encourage donors to send the SPLC a lot more money. This whole story has nothing to do with informants. Alec Lace, the DOJ, indicted the SPLC on fraud charges. A paid informant helped plan Charlottesville, where we got the infamous lie that Trump said Nazis are fine people. Dinesh D'Souza warned about these Saul Alinsky tactics years ago, and they called him a conspiracy theorist. He was right. Here is Dinesh on C-SPAN 2 Book TV years ago.
What advice does Alinsky give to these young leftists? He says, listen, don't have posters because that's the usual leftist claptrap. He says, all of you come dressed as Klansmen. And then when the Republican speaker begins to speak, you just jump up and down and cheer wildly, so that you have created a media event that makes it sound like the Klan loves the Republicans. So here's a classic example of straight-out deception, historically invalid, in fact, the opposite of the truth, a big lie if you want to use the term of my new book. But Alinsky had this uncanny ability to realize that you could use the big lie effectively to extract concessions.
He's been warning, everyone's been warning, laying out the playbook years ago. Stage the lie, feed it to the media, smear Trump supporters as extremists. And now, Caroline Leavitt, on camera, outside the White House,
It was quite shocking to me to learn of the egregious violations of the law the Southern Poverty Law Center was committing. And I think that's a story that should be on the front page of every newspaper in this country because they've obviously been duping their supporters and the American taxpayers for far too long. It's a criminal organization, clearly, and that's not our DOJ saying that or Todd Blanche saying that. That's a grand jury indictment saying that.
A criminal organization. Caroline Leavitt, White House press secretary, making it very clear. Calling out the media blackout, put the SPLC alleged criminal conduct front and center. Now the focus shifts to the racket that critics say was built to manufacture fear, cash the checks, and keep the smear machine rolling. Brian Mudd writes, create the crisis, sell the fix, repeat. That's the SPLC model, and now they're facing federal wire fraud charges. Chuck Schumer's defense of them tells you everything. Listen to this take.
Joel's face is priceless.
Free express. What does that have to do with anything?
Yeah, they should be free to take money saying that they're combating, like the KKK, and then turn around and actually fund KKK efforts. That if you, among other things, if you take Chuck Schumer at face value, this situation actually looks bad enough that it could lead to the end of this ridiculous organization that has been a fraud shell front. Not just because of this, but for so many other reasons for decades now. The Southern Poverty Law Center is a scam organization, but they're not the only scam organization by far. I do think this could be like an Acorn situation when James O'Keefe exposed them way back when, in the early days of Project Veritas. But I want you to so this is straight out of Rules for Radicals, Saul Alinsky. Create the crisis and then address the crisis. Wash and repeat.
Wash and repeat. If that last clip exposed the SPLC playbook, this next one follows the cash. And what the paper trail shows is even uglier than the spin. This is Kash Patel. We played this earlier today. This was his appearance after the official indictments were handed down. And this is his appearance this morning.
Lie. The charity that supposedly fought the Klan funded the Klan. The charity that supposedly fought neo-Nazis funded neo-Nazis. The Southern Poverty Law Center ran a methodical, calculated scheme to defraud their donor base of $3 million and lied to them and used an illicit banking structure system to create shell companies to hide their money and who it was being sent to, specifically for the reason to sow discord and hate into our society. This is the ultimate definition of hypocrisy. And if you look at the indictment produced by the Department of Justice and the FBI, you will see that these banking institutions tie directly the funding mechanisms in which the Southern Poverty Law Center used to fund at least 8 hate groups they supposedly wanted to take out, but they were paying the very villains of our society they supposedly wanted to protect us from. That's the ultimate hypocrisy.
Oh, God, I'm so happy for this moment. I am so happy for this moment. The SPLC has been attacking me, Next News, for years. And now they're going to get their day. So the big reveal here is not just that the SPLC is accused of fraud, is that the entire business model, as critics describe it, was allegedly built on creating the threat, amplifying the threat, then fundraising and gaining political influence off the threat. As FBI Director Kash Patel put it, the money trail does not lie. As House Republicans argue, this deserves a much deeper probe. As the Trump administration pushes forward, the mask is finally coming off. So this so-called watchdog, they may have been operating as a narrative factory, one that helps shape public opinion, weaponize institutions, and smear political opponents while allegedly bankrolling the hate it claimed to oppose. That's not activism. That's corruption dressed up as virtue. And this is why tonight matters. The people who spent years pointing fingers at patriotic Americans are now the ones under federal scrutiny. And that is a massive America First moment. President Trump promised accountability, and this is what accountability looks like when the untouchables finally get touched. If the charges hold, then one of the left's most powerful moral weapons was a fraud machine all along. Now, I want to know what you think. Should Congress fully expose every tie between the SPLC, the legacy media, and officials from the previous administration? Yes or no? Drop your answer in the comments. Share this report everywhere because the corporate press clearly doesn't want this thing spreading. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't, and text raw feed to that number on the screen, 844-840-4963, so you could bypass big tech suppression and get direct updates to your phone from me. And check out the next news merch shelf below this video. Remember, Patriots, stay bold, stay loud, and keep fighting for the truth.
The system controls information. Information control is power.
They don't want you to see this.
The truth only survives together. They don't want this shared. Share this now. You know out.